My name is Bruno Dequen. I'm the artistic director from RIDM, which stands for Rencontre Internationale du Documentaire de Montréal. And we're a film festival dedicated to documentary cinema that's taking place every year in November in Montreal. And usually the festival is taking place over 10 days in theaters. And this year the festival is online and it's taking place over 3 weeks until December 2nd. I wouldn't pretend that we're selecting like the best of documentaries because it doesn't really make sense depending on one's opinion. The first thing that we're looking at is the creative aspect. Is this documentary conventional? Is it trying to do something more stimulating on a cinematic level? So that the first thing is we're dedicated to documentary cinema. So it's not like documentaries are means of communication only. It has to be some kind of a work of art. And then the things that we take into account is the diversity of approaches and subjects. To give you an idea, like for example, if we have some films that are in the international competition, and when we build the international competition, usually the first 2-3 films will be films that we really like a lot from a purely subjective point of view. The remaining films will be selected based on the diversity that we can propose in international competition. So for example, if we have already 2 films from the US, there is a fairly good chance we won't select a third one because that would be too much. We will look for something from Asia, something from Africa, something from Europe or Latin America, but anything but US, not because there are not more good US films, just because we are trying to have some diversity. And if we have 2 films that are more like portrayals of characters, the remaining films will look for something else also. So we'll look for something that is maybe more essayistic, or if we have films that are about family, we'll look for films that are more about politics. It's really the way it works. You have the first bulk of films, and based on this first selection, all the rest is based on comparisons, and also taking into account do we have enough films by women filmmakers, enough films by men, because deep down many films are interesting, and you could easily do a festival with 500 films. So most of the decisions are based on all those criteria combined. Why documentary is important? I think for 2 reasons. One which is related to cinema, and one which is related to the way we perceive the world. The first answer related to cinema is the fact that for many years now, documentary cinema, especially documentary films that are conceived by authors or independent filmmakers, tend to be extremely creative. So from a pure cinephile perspective, we think that there is a lot to discover in documentary films in terms of how they use the language of cinema, how they mix documentary and fiction, how they are extremely creative. The other reason why it's important is the fact that, especially now, we live in a world in which the news are more and more quick, and the way we perceive the world tends to be through snippets of information. And the thing with documentary cinema is the fact that those filmmakers take a long time to make films. So usually it's a deeper access into some of the main issues that we're confronted today. Documentary cinema allows us to take more time to go into an issue, and this is something that you cannot have outside of documentary cinema, right? I mean, you don't have that many articles or news who have the time to dig deeper. And another thing is, in terms of more intimate or personal issues, You will find films that take the time for you to empathize with characters, with people. And for example, like we're showing a film Petite Fille, which is 2 hours portrayal of a young girl who was born male. And this is typically something like we keep hearing about trans issues. It's something else to spend 2 hours with this young girl and better understand what's going on in her life. This year we decided to make the festival not about specific films but about specific sections. So the tricky thing is you can't access one film at the festival. There are like 2 ways of attending the festival, which one is the festival pass, which gives you access to everything. And the other one is passes for a section, which are pretty cheap. It's like $15 for 12 films. So the thing is, I would more encourage people to look at the sections and what might interest them. Like, for example, I was mentioning becoming oneself, like anyone who's interested in gender issues or just identity issues as a whole, this would be the section for them. If you're not that interested in this, but you're very interested in more like political based films or films about activists or films about political issues, the 2 sections to look at are challenging power and surviving violence. Look at the sections and try and find which ones are more interesting for you. And all of them are extremely eclectic. So once you go into a section, you have 12 films and every format is mixed. So you have feature-length film, you have short films, you have medium-length films. And so you'll find like a very diverse approaches. One thing that is very important, not just for RIDM, but the one thing that I remember is that students usually are not aware enough of contemporary cinema, which has always been the case at the university. It's normal. I mean, you have to start at, with the basics. Remember, like, for example, usually most of the documentary classes or courses tend to focus a lot on certain periods. Not just Concordia, but anywhere. Like when you look at how people are being taught documentary film, or for example, Quebec documentary film, it's always the cinéma direct. It's always the same period from end of the 50s up until mid 60s. That's usually the period that people always go back to, which is okay because it's kind of the foundation of many things. But there are a lot of contemporary documentary filmmakers in Quebec, for example, that many students might not know about. Also, it allows students to better understand current movements in cinema. And I think it's very important to know what's going on, and there are no better places to know what's going on in contemporary cinema than the festivals, no matter which festival it is. So I think that's the main reason. It's to know that there are a lot of filmmakers doing very interesting things that were born after Alfred Hitchcock died. And I think that's kind of an important thing to take into account.